Is NIL and the transfer portal ruining college football for you? Me too, on some level. Not going to lie about that, but I do have some hope, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight on this edition of the How About That Dogs Cast. The thing that we see in our faces all the time when it comes to college football is who got the biggest NIL deal? Which recruit is holding out for the largest NIL deal? How much NIL is it going to take to get this kid to transfer from here to there? And why do these players think that the best road for their future success is to jump into the portal so much? That's what we see all the time. But I have to tell you, friends, there's some stuff going on right now at the University of Georgia that has, well, it's restored my faith in college football and in the Georgia football program under Kirby Smart. What are you talking about, Randy? I'm going to tell you. The thing that I've noticed over the last two and a half years is when Kirby talks about NIL and transfer portal and those sorts of things, the way he's using language around those things and the way he describes how he's dealing with his players in the conversations that they have to have. Well, those things have changed. Wait a minute, what exactly does that mean? And then this year, in 2025, after a year where the Dogs won the SEC championship, were injured most of the year, were not as good as they had been in previous years, and yet they still managed to put a ring on their finger, the offseason since that last game against Notre Dame has been a little mixed, a little meh, a little bleh among the Georgia football fans that I talked to. Kirby calls that a culture win, a program win, the kind of things that helped them survive one of the toughest schedules in the country last year, despite all of the challenges they have, and even make it to the game. All of that was based off of culture. And then to get the win against Texas in the way that they had to, coming from behind, that is a culture and a program win. Bear with me. I know it doesn't sound like these two things go together. We're talking about NIL and transfer portal and how it's ripping programs apart and leveling the playing field for everyone. And yet I'm sitting right here and telling you that Georgia managed to be a champion in the toughest league in college football last year in spite of all that, because of culture and because of program stability.
How about them dogs?
These two things seem at odds, but they're really not, because here in 2025, as Kirby has gotten back in front of the media after what a lot of fans felt was a disappointing season in 2024, especially the way it ended. You've heard me call it one of the most embarrassing losses that Georgia's had in a while. In that sort of environment, we have seen Kirby Smart step to the podium here, and we've heard his players talk in such a way that I'm starting to think that what they have going on at Georgia is, in fact, different than maybe what they have everywhere else. Maybe it's not. Maybe we're just hyper-focused on it. But regardless of whether or not that's the case, the thing I am super excited about is what I'm hearing them say. And Kirby essentially came to the podium this Tuesday and put all of his cards on the table. And I've told you guys time and time again, everybody sort of wants to think that Kirby's playing four-dimensional chess when he comes to the media. And listen, if you are a great coach and he studied under the greatest, certainly he took it with him that you can talk to your team through the media. So that's going to be a part of it. It just is if you are a good coach. But that doesn't mean that Kirby's not going to tell us the truth. And this week, that's exactly what happened. He told us the truth when he stepped up there and said, it has come to the point now where we have adjusted how we go about our recruiting process for high school students. The top program in college football, the man at the head of it, just announced to the world that the way they are recruiting their players out of high school to build their program, their foundational roster, has changed. We are in the era of NIL and the transfer portal, and it's about to change again because revenue sharing is on the way. Now, every college football fan worth their salt and every head coach out there is hoping that when revenue sharing comes into play, it's going to take away the Wild West aspect of what's going on. But it's never going to get rid of it completely. And Kirby knows this. So he's like, just tell me the rules and let me play by them. And those rules for Kirby Smart mean that they are now adjusting how they go about their high school recruiting. And you say, wait, Randy, Georgia finished with the overall number 2 recruiting class, mere points, single-digit points away from yet another number 1 recruiting class. What are they changing? They're still going after the best players anywhere they are in the country. That's never going to change. But it's about the other things, the intangible factors that they're factoring in when they're choosing who to offer. They're not only going after the top-tier players. They are now reducing the amount of impact and importance that they put on the measurables. How fast a kid is, how big, how strong, those sorts of things. And they are doing more research and verifying, does this kid love the game of football? Does this kid practice the way we think he's going to have to practice at the University of Georgia? Will these things translate? And will he be able to get out there and do it when it's hard and do it when he doesn't want to and value the process, the grind that is college football here in 2025? Is that who this kid is? Does he have the passion and the fire? Have you heard Kirby say that recently? Have you heard the players echo those words? It is filtering through the program at the University of Georgia that it's not good enough to show up, be super talented, and think that that's going to get you by, because it's not. And if you need any more examples of this where a player's real payday is on the back end, look no further than Javon Bullard, a 3-star kid who loved the game. He loved the physicality, the violence of it, the attitude associated with it. He loved to practice. Now, Javon Bullard is an NFL player. He's a Sunday player. He was a national championship game MVP, an SEC championship game MVP. He loved the game. He took the coaching. He got better, and now he's a Sunday player. Look at that guy. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 35% of these kids have never gone through a spring practice at the University of Georgia, and here they are on the field. That's a third of your team new, and they need to know how to do it. You have guys that in the past would be considered underclassmen and players that maybe you wouldn't hope would have to lead your team that are now leading them because they're the veterans in the room. Guys like KJ Bolden, as just one example. But you also have CJ Allen, right? You also have guys like Gunnar Stockton, who have been in the program, although they haven't been starters. Now those dudes have to be your leaders. So everything is accelerated. Everything is sped up. Everybody across the country is dealing with the same kind of thing. So the difference on Saturdays is going to come down to A, do you have as good or better players than your opponent? And B, did you get them more ready than your opponent got their young players ready? And then can you put them in a good game plan? Can they execute? All the things that make football football. At this point, intangibles carry more weight than they have ever carried before. Because if a kid doesn't have it between his ear holes, if a kid doesn't want to work on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then how's he going to show up and play on Saturday? How's he going to be that little bit better to help you get the win? And that is what Kirby Smart and his coaching staff are looking for right now in players. You're never going to have that outweigh the measurables: speed, weight, power. Kids are ranked the way they're ranked because of those things. But now Kirby has told us that the number 1 program in the country is now bringing that down and bringing up the intangible lever, and we're in a different world when it comes to evaluating players. And it's not just Kirby saying that. It's not just me sitting here and saying, in Kirby I trust. He knows it all. He's infallible. That's not what I'm saying. And I can back it up. All you have to do is take a look at who I think is going to be your number 1 quarterback here in 2025 for the Georgia Bulldogs, and that is Gunnar Stockton. Gunnar is a young man who essentially his entire life has wanted to be the starting quarterback at the University of Georgia. This is a dream come true. He grew up thinking of wearing the red and the black. He grew up thinking of playing between the hedges, and now he has his opportunity. Now, granted, his first turn in the chair was a little bit more surprising and unorthodox maybe than any of us thought it was going to be, but he's already got some very, very valuable bright light experience under his belt, and he's clearly the front runner. making his way into 2025 to what I believe will be the starting quarterback position for Georgia. But again, he's living out his dream. It means something to him to be playing in Athens. And even when he wasn't playing, he was focused on staying at Georgia and competing for the quarterback position and being the very best backup quarterback he could possibly be behind Carson Beck last year. He didn't get a chance to show us during the regular season that often, but when his number was called, and how many times have you heard Kirby Smart say this? He was ready to go because he had worked while he waited. And when the lights came up and it was Gunner's show, he led them to it from behind to an SEC championship. And he played well enough in the Sugar Bowl to win that game. He just didn't get a lot of help. And there were some other factors involved there. But Gunner Stockton is the embodiment of what Kirby Smart wants in a Georgia Bulldogs football player here in 2025. From the time he was little, everybody knew that Gunner Stockton would be ready when his time came. And we saw that play out in Atlanta against Texas. A kid grew up dreaming of wearing the G. He grew up wanting to play between the hedges. He waited his turn. He put in the work when nobody was looking. He tried to improve as much as he could without receiving actual game reps, which that's not his fault. And then when he had his chance, he made it happen. He capitalized on it. That is the perfect story of what Kirby Smart wants at the University of Georgia. But it's not the only story. It's not the only one that's out there. Gunner is a shining example, and we're going to see more of that here soon. But he is not the only one who is out there making it happen for the Georgia Bulldogs and feeling and loving it in a way that in today's college football world, maybe everybody else doesn't.
Have you ever wondered why Kirby Smart is considered one of the top coaches in college football? Why he builds his programs the way he does, and why he's been so successful? It's because he's adapted the teachings of some of the best philosophical and strategic minds the world has ever known. These are lessons that help you be successful not only on the football field, but also in life. If you're interested in learning some of those secrets for yourself, the key is to help you change your life and better understand what makes Kirby tick. Good news is I've already done all the work for you. Just sign up for the Ring the Bell newsletter below and I'll send you my curated list absolutely free. And you can start to unlock the keys to help you dominate life the way Kirby Smart and his Georgia Bulldogs dominate college football. Get it today.
Now, Gunner Stockton is not the only Georgia Bulldog who feels this way. I know he may be the one that everybody points to because the ink has already been spilled on his Georgia story. Now, there's more to come. He's still writing his book, but he's not the only one. There are other players who understand that in this new era of college football where NIL and transfer portal are there and ready for you to utilize, take your chance on at any moment. Then you have guys like CJ Allen. He's one of those guys. And I know this because when he stepped to the podium this year, this spring, CJ Allen stepped to the podium and he let it be known that even though this is a young team, what they do at Georgia is different. And the standard is the standard. The standard remains unchanged, regardless of the roster or who's here or who's not. I don't think CJ Allen's pointing fingers at anybody there who's decided to get into the portal. I mean, each of these young men have their own decisions to make, but he's letting you know that it doesn't matter how young we are. It doesn't matter who decides to transfer out and chase greener pastures somewhere else. The way we do things at Georgia is the way we do them, and that's not going to bend. So it's up to us to raise our level of play to meet it. Now, you look at a guy like this who is now a bona fide two-year starter, a leader in this room, a leader on this team, a guy that I think needs to have a huge 2025. If Georgia's going to achieve the way that we all hope that they will, he could have gone and played somewhere else. He probably could have amped up his NIL money right now. He probably had people tampering, reaching in, trying to get him to listen to their offers, but he wanted no part of it. He wanted nothing to do with it. And that's because his motivation for playing is not about NIL. And he already has the playing time. CJ Allen stays focused on football for the love of the game. That's what Kirby wants to hear. And CJ, whether he's parroting Kirby or whether he honestly just came to Georgia that way, my vote is on the latter. CJ Allen is thinking back to when he played the game as a kid, when he played for free. There was no NIL back then. There's no NIL on the sand lot. There's no transfer portal in the schoolyard. I mean, that's not how it works. You play because you love the game. And the fact that you get paid for it now is great. It's fantastic. These players deserve to be rewarded for their hard work. They're treated as professionals. The fan base views them as semi-professionals at the very least. They're expected to act as professionals. Yes, they should be compensated right now. That's not up for contention. That's not the point we're discussing. What I'm trying to drive home here is that by his own words, CJ Allen is telling you that he chose Georgia to be at Georgia, to be coached by Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, guys that are now old hat when it comes to churning out Butkus Award winners and first-round draft picks. That's why he came to Georgia, not because of the NIL deal, not because he was looking to run off to go somewhere else if they coached him too hard. So CJ Allen is another guy that when Kirby Smart looks across his roster, he's like, that's my new avatar. That's the new prototype here at the University of Georgia. Gunnar Stockton, CJ Allen. But even with those two, they're not alone. CJ Allen, as I said, he is hoping, I hope he can make the leap. And he, I'm sure, is hoping that he can make the leap from year 2 to year 3 the way Jalen Walker did and put himself in contention for yet another Butkus Award winner here at the University of Georgia. So his future is all in front of him. His big payday is in front of him. And he understands it. And he is not the only one. There's another story on the roster that you might know something about. The kid from Compton, California, the kid who chose to come all the way across the country to play at the University of Georgia because he believed in the history and the tradition of the University of Georgia at the running back position, because he trusted Kirby Smart to give him an opportunity to do the same thing for him that he was able to do for James Cook or that he was able to do for DeAndre Swift. And think about it. If you're a parent, do you send your baby across the country on a notion or a whim if you aren't certain that you are buying into what the coaches are pitching you? If you are not certain that you believe everything they're telling you about what lies ahead in his future? Of course you wouldn't. Nobody would. I'm a father. There's no way I would do that unless I was absolutely confident in what I was being told. If I knew I could trust that head coach, that's the only way I would put my baby on that plane and send them across the country. But then, even if you do that, you make that choice and you come out here, a guy like Nate Frazier, he still has to do that work. Mama can't do it for you. Sister, brother, they can't do it for you. Your auntie, the people that are your why, that make you want to work so hard to be successful, to attain that future that's in front of you. Your why, that's what propels you forward. But Frazier's the one who still has to do it. And he said so. He's like, when it's hot here in Georgia in July, he's like, that's something new that I hadn't seen before. I hadn't felt it that way. It's different. But I still laced on my cleats, put on my pads, and went out there and did it. And that's where his why comes in. That's why he keeps pushing. But he chose that a long time ago. The choice is made, and it's like Kirby Smart says, if you want to be great, there is no alternative. You don't have a choice about what it takes to be great, what it takes to meet the standard, because it takes what it takes. And on one hand, if you're not paying very close attention, you might say that's gibberish. On the other hand, though, if you actually see the picture and you actually understand what's being said, you know that that rings clear as a bell. It takes what it takes because the standard is the standard. Just like CJ Allen and Gunnar Stockton, Nate Frazier made that choice a long time ago, and he is fully invested. And how do we know? Because Nate Frazier stepped up to the mic, and when they asked him, why did you come to Georgia? He pretty much laid it out for you. It's because of the respect that he had for the players that came before him at the running back position and established the legacy of running back university at the University of Georgia. And if you've seen Nate during games when he scored touchdowns, you have seen him do jazz hands in honor of Sony Michel. You have seen him hand the ball to the referee in honor of Nick Chubb. You have seen him do the DeAndre Swift bow, or maybe the Todd Gurley bow, if you think about it that way. And you even saw Nate Frazier against Florida this year get a little amped up and give him a Gator chomp. Now, Kirby had his say about that on the sideline, but that's another story. The bottom line is Nate is another guy who was fueled by passion and fire and love for the University of Georgia and what it represents and the history of it, and he wants to be a part of it moving forward. We know because he's told us. He says, I want to continue the tradition of excellence at Georgia and keep RBU, keep that legacy alive. He views himself as the next one in line. And Georgia fans, you have to love it. You have to love it. You have to see it, and you have to love it. It has to make your heart flutter when you see him nod back to when DeAndre Swift did his bows in the end zone after another electric run where he gets in there. You have to love it when you see him break free and he's out in the open field showing flashes of Todd Gurley when he plunges into the end zone and he just can't help himself. Gurley was flagged too when he did it against Florida. They took their chewing. They're big boys. But it takes that edge. That's what these dudes have to play with. But they're not thinking about it now. They are not distracted by the lure of the transfer portal or NIL because they made their choices a long time ago about where they wanted to be. Gunnar Stockton, C.J. Allen, Nate Frazier, easy examples, but there are others. Justin Miller, guys who are showing up, putting in the work, and showing out when they get their chance in the game. Chris Cole, another one. Ellis Robinson, another one. And I could keep going. These guys, they've already made their choice. They've already made their choice, and they're putting in the work now to make it pay off because they believe in what Georgia is and what Georgia can do for them and their future. They see the bigger picture. And me sitting back and looking, it helps me to understand that these guys know that it's not just about this quick turn thing. It's about the long game. I mean, you can see, I put it on the screen for those who are watching on YouTube. Frazier says, I want to continue this. I need to continue RBU. I need to continue the celebrations. I need to continue the traditions because that's what they used. And I kept them alive, man. Like, it was crazy. Just watching all those things they did, making those plays as Georgia legends. I want to keep that tradition going. It's my job. We got to keep it going forever. Does that sound like a dude that's looking to run off to play somewhere else? Does it sound like somebody who is tempted at every NIL offer that's coming his way? And rest assured that teams are pitching. I mean, you're looking at a cat here who is a preseason Heisman contender. That's the kind of players we're talking about. That's the level of athlete we're talking about. But Kirby and his coaching staff didn't go just get those dudes because they were the best. When Nate Frazier was out in Compton, he was rated in his recruiting cycle as the number one all-purpose back in the country. So yes, they're going to pay attention. They're going to go look at him. But there were other things that helped them make those choices. And now Kirby's come clean and he's told us. He's come right out and told us. It's not just about the measurables. Speed, power, toughness. Now it's about all of those things. But also, do they love the game? Do they have a passion and fire for the game to show up and do the work when nobody's looking and they're not worried about whatever their NIL number is? Because those guys that really care that way, when you blend in the talent that they're born with and that they're working to hone right now, when you put all that stuff together, that's what makes an amazing player. That's what makes a good player become great. It's what makes a great player become legendary. It's what takes a team and turns them into a champion. And all we have to do as Georgia Bulldog fans is look at the recent history of the program to understand that Kirby Smart knows what it looks like. And so at the end of the day, I guess I am saying I trust in Kirby. But now my faith has been renewed in college football and in Georgia football under Kirby Smart, because these young men are now sharing with us the parts of their stories that helped them get to the point where they became Georgia Bulldogs in the first place. So in an ever-shifting landscape of college football, the Georgia Bulldogs are no different in what they have to deal with. NIL, transfer portal. In some ways, I hear Georgia fans and college football fans saying time after time, it's ruining the game. This is not the game I grew up with. It is not the game I'm going to know moving forward. It's never going to be the same. And that's true. It's never going to be the same, especially with the revenue sharing deal that's coming this year. But it doesn't mean that it's a waste and we should toss it in the waste basket. Because when I look at the University of Georgia and I see the kinds of young men that are being recruited to play for my university, and I see what they do every time they go out on the field and the way they play with passion and fire to represent the G, and I see the way they talk and listen to the way they talk when they step to the mic and have the opportunity to share their true feelings about the University of Georgia and why they play there, yeah, it makes me feel good to be a fan of this university, a fan of its head coach, and a fan of the trajectory of my program moving forward from 2025 and beyond. The glory days are not in Georgia's past. We are in the middle of the heyday. And as long as players like Gunnar Stockton and Nate Frazier and CJ Allen, and the new wave of players like Justin Miller and Ellis Robinson and Chris Cole, as long as this is the kind of player that Kirby Smart and his staff are going to keep recruiting to Athens to play between the hedges, well, we've got a lot of victories lined up in front of us. And I, for one, am here for the ride. Go Dogs!
Told them, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told them.